Okay. We are live. I'm just going to check myself on the, not literally myself, but check myself on the phone, but we should be there. So, just making sure. It says we are, but.
Yeah, I can see you. I can hear you okay.
Yeah, there's some people there. It looks like people ticking, so that's good. People joining in. So, can anybody, let me go into the comments. So, can anybody hear us, guys? We're just settling in, make sure before we kick off. Good afternoon. Stabbing Joe. Love it. You are live, we're live, we're good. Okay. So should we give people just a couple of seconds so before we kick into the thingy? So how are you doing then, Peter? You okay?
All right, thank you very much. Yeah,
enjoying the sunshine or the lack of?
Yeah, just about. Yeah. The summer, British summer. Where is it?
Oh, I don't know. Do you know what? It's been absolutely atrocious. I've seen on a couple of articles in the news people saying we're going to have like another 3 months of rain or something.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the next minute we're going to have a El Scorchio 3 days, the highest on record. Then again, it says the temperatures have dropped. And you think, oh, okay.
Yeah, back into the winter temperatures. It's right, just like 8 degrees anyway, or something ridiculous at night time. Not good, not good. Yeah. Anyway, the people are joining in, and there will be a cross and coming and going. So anyway, Peter, welcome to the channel.
Thank you.
You've appeared on that before, and not any other of my videos. So that's nice to have you first time here. So for all of you guys, yes, hello everybody, and thank you for joining us. So Peter, I've known Peter for just over a year ago, isn't it? Over a year.
Yeah.
And I've been following you and your adventures, which I must say, absolutely amazing. You're honestly the inspiration to, like, I think many people who follow you, and hopefully to some new followers. So would you just briefly tell people what, a little bit about yourself, basically, and what you do?
Yeah, basically, I've always been interested in outward bound stuff. Always been interested in physical challenges, from athletics to martial arts, all that sort of thing. As a teenager, I think we've all gone through that sort of process of doing different things. But then it's sort of, I'm still a bit of a big kid, really. I still do the same stuff. And yeah, I like going wild camping, canoeing, that sort of thing. That's where I started on the YouTube channel in 2009, 2010. That's where a number of people that I know of now, obviously met you recently, but met people from that outward bound stuff, bushcrafting, all that sort of activities, and trekking, been to the Himalayas, all that sort of thing. So I'm a bit of an adventurist as well. And then also, I've always been involved with exercise and fitness. 30 years ago, I took it up as a profession, requalified instead of doing it part-time and hobby, did it as a profession. Then I went to the year 2004, qualified as a life coach, because I was always interested in the mindset, which obviously we're going to be talking about tonight, and what motivates people, what makes people, the psychological aspects and what have you. And then I've been doing that since, using the basis of sports psychology, which you can apply to any activity. Doesn't have to be sports or athletics, but using the tools of the mindset of sports psychology, you can apply it to other subjects and activities as well. So that's basically it in a nutshell. And I've always been involved with well-being, the mindset, well-being, and physical health.
Yeah, good. Obviously, there's a reason here on the channel, which we'll cover then later. But I love this, how the modesty, you said, oh, I've just been in the Himalayas, it's just like what? You literally climbed like the mountain, didn't you? You just literally put yourself through absolute hell for a very long period of time. And
there was one. One in particular, which I think we had a conversation about, and it was just normal for me. I mean, it was still a challenge, but it was 10 days, 6 to 8 hours a day, trekking up to 6,500 meters altitude, 6.5 kilometers from sea level to the highest vertical point.
Yeah.
Even some aircraft don't fly that high, depending obviously on weather conditions. But so that was summiting that. But it was the hardest thing I ever did. But what got me through it was the psychological approach, and basically,
that's what I'm about to ask.
Quite an intense version, practicing what I preach, basically, and it actually got me through it. So that's. But for me, it's sort of normal.
It's just
but
normal,
you're out in the cold,
Yeah. Cool. No, it was amazing watching you do this, and amazing somebody who have that much physical strength and mental strength, and more so mental training to put yourself through to what you did anyway. But that's great. But on the other note as well, I've had to obviously flick through your YouTube channel haven't done it for a while, but I spotted there was a video where you appeared on what looked like it was this morning, the breakfast show.
That's it. Yeah, Philip Schofield when he was on telly a lot, and Amanda Holden.
Yeah.
And it was during the Ebola crisis.
Yeah.
And it was just things where the newspapers were selling the story, and then TV channels take up the news headlines. Yeah, so I was asked to go on that as a prepper survivalist and talking about the aspects of preparedness within a situation that's unknown and how do you adapt to it. So yeah, it was an interesting interview. It was about 15 minutes, and I was there with a well-known TV documentary presenter and doctor. He had twin brothers. And so yeah, he was on the aspect of looking at it on the medical clinical side, and I was on it as the aspect of, you know, if people are being concerned about it, then how would you approach it? And basically just wanting two angles, from the medical side to a prepper survivalist attitude to it. So yeah, that was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago, wasn't it? Yeah. So basically, you obviously class yourself as a prepper, so you do, right? As you mentioned it yourself. So it just shows basically the preppers we're not just sort of the random people. We are still people that have a specific knowledge and skills, if that makes sense. A specific, we're literally all different, but for you to have the ability, you froze a little bit. Yeah, for you to have an ability to be able to hopefully help people with the mental side of this, I think is going to be like absolutely amazing. So anyway, obviously you guys probably wonder why obviously we invited yourself to have a chat on the channel, but I have, and I've obviously spoke to you before over the cameras, and the guys who follow my channel will know that probably about last year, towards the end of last year, I've gone through what I could probably say a prepper burnout. I've gone to the stage and I've done the video, and I wasn't hiding that, to the point where I was just done a video and I said, you know what? I just had enough of the fear mongering. I had enough of those scary videos, of the headlines and everything else. And I just felt like I just really just wanted to give up. And I didn't. Some people said like, well, you know, surely you have to be like really strong for everybody else. But at the same time, it's only strong as one can be if one actually feeling strong himself, if that makes sense, right? So I've now gone to the stage like, do you know what? I honestly, and I didn't know what to do. And then after I've done this video, I had a few people that have been emailing me and messaging me, pretty much saying that they're going through a very similar thing, but some of them were on a worse level than others. And there was one very concerning case. Unfortunately, I've been getting a few messages, and only I could help by just saying to basically take yourself back from the social media, from the news, and just take a deep breath. Just not say take on a hobby, but do something. And just stop watching this and feeding on fear, which we'll come back to the later. And unfortunately, after a long time of having a contact from that subscriber, I've no longer, I haven't heard from him in basically a very, very long time as of suddenly. And after having those emails, my point was I wanted to bring somebody who could potentially just guide us slightly and give us a slight understanding to why do we get to this stage, and how can we possibly control our minds to be able to deal with those certain things. Because as a prepper, hi guys, sorry, because I have to keep an eye on the messages, sorry. As a prepper, I have to, obviously we have to keep an eye on what's happening in the world, right? Have to keep an eye on the news. But at the same time, it's very hard, I find it myself very hard not to get heavily involved into that, the whole concept of the fear thing, if you wish. So obviously that's why I wanted to have a chat with you and see what you could possibly suggest that we do and how we can deal with that. First of all, do you agree in terms of the whole fear, the thing? Do you agree that there's a lot of it? And I think even for totally sane person, it's very hard to not to get down with that constant news and constant bad news, or
very much. I mean, I'll sort of try and keep it in a nutshell, the time that we've got, so I can make bullet points. Hopefully after this chat, people can go away and it'll get them thinking. And this is what it's all about, which brings me to the point of thinking and assessing things. There's 2 points that can be manufactured by fear: the real factual situation that makes one think, my golly gosh, this is very, very concerning. Or it can be the media is portraying it to get viewing figures, as not clickbait, but within the news. You know, newspapers sell, headlines get your attention. There's a principle called AIDA, which is AIDA. The A stands for you get someone's attention. Right. You then get their interest. and then you get them to take part of the actions. So you bring them into a desire to do something, whether it's positive or negative, the desire, not that you want to feel afraid, but it creates a motive to think and do something, and then what actions you're going to take. So if you think of the IDA principle, there's two factors which create the fear. It's either the sensationalized imagery, which gets people's attention to make people watch the news. Yeah, the news is there to give us hopefully unbiased information, but they're not going to talk in a very easygoing way. They're going to say it in a way, it's all scripted in a way to get people's attention. So we either are concerned, not that they purposely want to make us afraid, but it's a byproduct of just the society we live in nowadays and how we tend to get information. Then you have to take a step back. And the more you do these things that we're going to talk about this evening, the more you get used to it. So you have to assess what is actually behind that information, how much of it is relatively true and factual, and how much of it is being sensationalized, and actually how much am I actually sensationalizing it because I don't really know what to do with the information, if that makes sense. So there's depending on the individual, there's a number of little dynamics going on that will make maybe half a dozen people focus on a concerning, fearful situation, but they might deal with it in very different ways, albeit it's the one situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So Peter, what does it make us, and I got to ask that question, what does it make us to keep coming back and doing this? I said to myself, and I said to people, don't do it, but yet it's still that constant need to have to follow it. You know it's bad for you, it's like an addiction, and you still do it. So what draws us to it? What principle, what's in our heads so stupid that we still have to come back for something that we've been punished for mentally to come back and do it again?
We'll go on a little bit of a curveball here. It's all to do with psychology, inner psychology of the individual. And it's based on what we all know of as the ego. And that gets misinterpreted as well. So I don't mean the ego as in showing off and sort of blowing your own trumpet. The ego is part of there within our life, which has got us through situations that we've had to deal with. So the ego is always there to help us deal with this three-dimensional existence that we live in. And it's there normally to protect us and to make us analyze and question things. That's what part of the ego is for. But depending on the individual and depending on how uncertain we are of our own thoughts, will depend if the ego takes over and keeps doing us. And I've mentioned this to you before as well. If you keep doing the things the way you've always done them, you'll get the results you've always got. So if one keeps going around this vicious circle going, I had a good day today, but then I saw something on the news and then I reflected on something that didn't work out. And I'm thinking, if that happens again, one needs to take a step back and analyze or assess one's own thinking process. When you start to, and I know it's easier said than done, but when you start,
isn't it? It is,
you can then go into the techniques that we'll be talking about briefly within this chat.
Yeah. So how would we possibly probably leads to your next thing. How would we possibly, first of all, I think realize, because we know the part of the thing was we're talking about the burnout. And I think probably I would put it down to what the feeling I had and feeling what many preppers have is that feeling of burnout. Yeah. Is there a stage we can realize or trying to train our brains to understand before it gets too late? I know it's kind of a bit odd because you think it's you should know, you understand when you're reaching a point, but I think as a generalist, a preppers, maybe we're all human the same, I don't know, but I find it's very difficult to find a point when I'm thinking what is now okay to feel and what is not when it comes to the preparedness. When are you drawing the line between of still being prepared and following, and between getting obsessed with what you're seeing or getting upset or even depressed with what you see on the news?
Okay.
Is there anything, or is there down to person to do it?
Yeah, it's first of all understanding, why does burnout happen? Why did you get up one day and the same thing that was on one's mind a few days ago maybe feels a bit better, or vice versa? And I've mentioned this to you before do you remember when I said about what I call the 100%?
Yes. Would you like to say this to the guys? I think it's very important. Again, I don't think many of us understood. I didn't. So I'll let you please explain to
okay. Yeah.
It's simple, but it's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, people say, like, as a quote or a sort of an approach to something being better even more than what they say. Oh, it's 110%. Oh, it's 120%. Well, that doesn't exist. 100% is 100 units out of 100, and the whole of the units becomes the 100%. So yeah, we say it as a gesture, oh, it's 110%, just to make us feel, oh yeah, it's even better than what it should be, or it's even worse than what it should be. But if we think of it, our life is the 100%. And what do I mean by that? The 100% is the content of everything you've got going on in your life. So if you think of it like a pie chart or a circle, and that's the 100% as a sort of a metaphoric image, and there are parts of that circle, like a pie chart would be, that take up parts of your life. Part of it might be, there might be a big percentage, a person goes to work, spends the majority of their time at work. There's the pressures there. The other part might be leisure, and then the other part might be domestic. So it might be 60, 20, 20. 60% of one's life and participation in the time you use is work, and it could be stressful. Then you've got another 40% left, which is say 20. This is for easy calculations. 20% in what you do leisurely, what your interests are, and the other 20% within your domestic life. Now, the domestic life might have more obligations and more intense energy involved compared to one's commitment to one's job, which you still feel is important to help the family or to help your personal domestic circumstances. But if we break it into that pie chart, what happens if you try and wedge in another slice of that pie on top of the 100%?
It would just burst, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the pie will start to split, and then that's when the burnout comes. So when one understands that, and a lot of I've mentioned before as well, with what I call the exclamation mark, which is symbolic of an exclamation mark is a real concerning situation one has to think about, or it's a challenge that one has to apply to. You can get one person on one side that go, yeah, I'll sort that out. And a person on the other side with the same situation will go, oh, I don't know what I'm going to deal with that. Why is that? It's down to the personal makeup and one's own aptitude. So when you start to understand yourself, that's the seed that needs to be planted, and why people think in this way, which we've sort of covered a little bit, explaining why do people think in these sort of terms and ways. Then you can start to make sense of the techniques that then can be used, rather than just sticking a sticky plaster over it, but the actual wound underneath, we're not still sorting it out because we don't understand what creates it. And when we do understand that, so our own inner reflect, why do I think that? Oh, it's because of one, A, B, or C. When we start to understand that about ourselves, obviously there's many different versions because there's many different people, but it all comes back to the same thing. When one understands how one thinks, then you can calculate and start to assess not doing the same things you've always done them and not getting the results of burnout you've always got.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I think hopefully it makes sense to the people as well. But generally, it's like, as you said, the pie chart thing is a perfect example. It's so easy to sort of comprehend. So basically you're saying, so the burnout comes when we're trying to basically just take on more than we physically, or in fact, probably mentally able to take. So when somebody says, I'll give it 120%.
Nail on the head. We can be doing nothing. Let's just say, hypothetically, your 100% pie chart was about all the thoughts going on in your head. Forget about going to work. Forget about that. I'm just sitting here being stressed with everything. Also, the burnout can be the emotional energy that comes from not feeling one can deal with a situation and being over concerned, but then putting it in perspective and going, I have to get on with life, but we can't go, well, just forget about it. We've got to look at it. We've got to assess it, understand it. We understand ourselves a little bit more. Then we go, now I know how not to make the wrong decisions, or how not to get burnout. Even though I've got it, I understand why. So you're in control of it. It sounds a bit of a contradiction in terms. Even when you're in control of your out of controlness, if that makes sense, or your burnout, you can understand why. You can take a step back and go, this is what I've got to do. So by this time tomorrow, or this time the next week, depending on the situation, the burnout will be released because I understand what's caused it. I know what I've got to do about it, especially emotional energies. They can be some of the most draining things beyond physical exertion. So I think, we're talking about really how people's emotions, I'm not talking about bursting out crying or laughing,
No, no.
but the emotions that can start to wear away on that 100% of the pie chart, because we're starting to put stuff in, thoughts and feelings that aren't normally part of our day-to-day weekly activity.
Yeah. Okay. So would you suggest like giving kind of some of it up type thing?
Say that again.
Would you suggest like giving some of it up mentally to trying to find a way to ease the mental pressure as a whole of the whole chart, if that makes sense?
Yes.
Or just the preparedness parts with the, the watching news and the whole depressing thing. Would that be the first?
Of all, you've got all that external stimulus that either can wear us down or perk us up. So if we're actually homogenizing it now and focusing on what we're talking about within this subject of being concerns, being prepared, being to preparedness, looking to the future, but then thinking, and it all boils down to when people go, this is out of my control.
Yeah.
But how you react to it can start to become under your control, because accepting there's certain things that we can't change, but we can adapt to it in a way of how we approach it. So it's very much like, not just, all right, and don't watch the news. You're going to know when you get used to this thinking process, you're going to go, like I do sometimes, I'll just switch on the news just to be entertained by it, because I know it's going to be these contradiction in terms from different politicians, which never tell the truth anyway. And when they tell what their manifesto is going to be, especially this time of year where we are now in the UK, there's a trust as well. And people get very concerned when they don't trust or they don't believe the system, so to speak.
Yeah.
So what you've got to do is actually sometimes, even though you might need to follow on and you still want to find out the conclusion of the information that concerned you 2 days ago, so you continue to watch the news or keep updated, which is important. It's then also going, right, how can I recharge my batteries while I'm still going along with this? Because it's necessary for me to be aware of these situations that are happening. There can be sometimes when you can go, right, I've had enough of that. And sometimes one might have to do that and go, that's it. And take a total break. And like you said at the beginning, get sort of recuperating, because then you're not distracted by the energies that are taking away your 100%. You're in your own, what I call zone. And then answers start to come because you've got less of the interference of the input that's coming from information outside. Of course, we've got to get information from outside of us, whether it's from a book, whether it's from a newspaper, whether it's from the news. But it's also, there's techniques one can do to calm one's senses, what I call revitalize for a short period of time. Then when you go back, so it's a bit like giving yourself a fast boost, recharging a battery. You plug it in, you recharge it, boom, all the torch is nice and bright again. Think of that as a metaphor. Sounds a bit cheesy and corny, but thinking of that as a metaphor of recharging. And there are breathing techniques that we can do as well, which we can go into in a little while if you want to. But otherwise, you're going to know sometimes, I'm just going to take a break from it. It's not important for me to find out for the rest of the week what the conclusions are, because I've got a pretty good idea.
But it's important to find that, to realize when it is the time to draw that line. And I think that's where potentially a lot of us find it that it's hard to find that line, to actually understand that, you know what, I think I had enough. But you think, did I? Or what if tomorrow?
Exactly. And that's where the ego comes back in. The ego goes, but if you double checked it, but it's not it's a subconscious thing. The ego is very much a subconscious, and we're governed by over 90% of what we do unconsciously, from pre-programming, from habits, from upbringing, from habits that we get involved with, i.e. our daily activities. And then when we start to want to be aware of things which are out of our control, we have to just gradually get used to it. So it's very much sort of changing the mindset and then sort of like doing particular techniques. But sometimes, just taking a step back is necessary to do.
Yeah. Okay. Like hopefully that we're trying to implement this is realizing the times as we can do that, isn't it? But you mentioned that the exercise that we've done before. I don't know whether you think that might be relevant to the preparedness part, or would you rather think we'd talk about the again, if you can enlighten maybe how does one prepare for potential? I think a lot of it obviously was said about feeding on the fear mongering, but at the same time, I think a lot of it comes with the worry, and how would you then potentially care or deal in a situation if something happens. A lot of us get to this stage where our imagination's not say overly active, but I think as a prepper you kind of have to foresee potentially what's going to be happening in the future, and then the worry comes to say, well, how on earth are we going to deal with that? So is there any advice? I know it's very hard. I know we've obviously got limited amount of time, but to give people an advice how to deal with, because the preparedness is not just, we're not just preparing for the obviously, not just the nuclear war, not just the war. Generally, we're preppers, we're preparing for even the little things, but a lot of people get down with a little things that happen, say little things to maybe you and me, but it's the big things to those people, like a loss of job or something else. You know, they are big things that will affect people, many people, in a different way. So when people come to that type of scenario, is there a way you can help or guide what people can do to don't let it spiral out of control and then get people down in the rabbit hole of just feeling depressed and upset and whatever comes with it type thing, in the situation that are just relevant to everyday horrible scenarios kind of thing? Is it something you can suggest, any exercises or anything that mentally people can do to, do you remember obviously we covered this, didn't we, on the show there, you sort of explained sort of exercises they'll make you you know, think of a bad thing, and then do you remember when you did, do you think that'll be a good one to for the peeps to hear?
We can do that. I'll do that in a mo, but just referring back to what you're saying about the sort of mindset and that, you can get sometimes the same concerning bit of information, say as a prepper, because that's the theme of what we're talking about that's brought us together to have this chat. So if we're talking about things that within the preparedness world, and then we think, oh, it's, you know, it's creating burnout, it's creating fear, it's creating really big worries, and someone else that can be of the same interest as someone like that, but actually goes, yeah, I feel the same, but I know the difference between me feeling out of control, what can I do, creating the fear, and actually a genuine situation. I could sit here now and go, I'm really worried if someone came up and tried to mug me and threaten me with a knife. It's not happening, but I could actually then, that could then govern me to go to some of the safest places just in case, because I'm actually over concerned. And it's becoming a little bit of an anxiety, which is quite natural. But if that's
would they change your actions? Sorry, forgive me for interrupting. Would they change your actions for the participation or perception of potentially the worst event? Does that change us as a people? Does it change our behavior? Because our brain thinking the worst thing, does it change our outcome, how we behave, and what actions we take that potentially can take us to that bad scenario, for example, or generally? Is that what happens?
Yes. And also, it's, if you were the sort of person going, oh yeah, well, of course there's concerns, being protective, but then you can go into a protective or prepared mindset without preparedness per se, but just being prepared for something, and not go down the dark alleys, not go to places that maybe got a bad reputation. And it doesn't mean you have to sit every single day in the back of your mind thinking, oh, I can't really go many places now because I could get attacked or my welfare could be at stake. Someone else that would still have those concerns wouldn't react like that, but still be safe, aware. So again, it's understanding, is it me or my distorted ego overriding, and just because I'm always concerned, I'm always a little bit on edge, I've always been like that, then it's acknowledging that and then working from there, because we could do all the techniques under the sun, but if something is so ingrained in the subconscious for so many years for a person to be a certain way, that can sometimes contribute to the fact that the techniques that are there to sort of help might not actually get into the root cause. So in a nutshell, root cause, are you the sort of person that overthinks about things anyway, regardless of preparedness? Are you someone who will always look at things negatively or always worried about something, over concerned, compared to someone else that can be concerned, but actually it's having that sort of little bit of more strength of will? And again, if you're not like that, you can get to be more used to being like that. So the technique would be the breathing technique. That's where we can start from, because the breath is very much connected to our emotions. So although we don't consciously, if we're stressed and anxious, or we've got the fight or flight and the adrenaline's going to kick in and we're worried and concerned, very, very minutely, in a diluted version, every time a person is concerned or worried or anxious or in a fearful mode, we go into that fight or flight situation, however subtle it is. So if we can control the breathing, because the breath can be controlled by emotional state. So what, in a nutshell, what happens when you go into the fight or flight mode? there is the panic, there's a concern, but we don't fight or flight anymore. And that actual negative energy stays stored in the body from the after effects of the chemical hormonal release of adrenaline. So what happens is when we've got the fight or flight, we've got the panic, what happens is the breathing reduces. Okay, I'm over exaggerating here to make the visual point. The breathing reduces because the body's going into, hang on, do I have to fight or flight here? Whereas if the breathing is all calm and relaxed, it's not ready to impulse and react to the fight or flight survival mode. So if we can reverse it the other way, which is a primal technique and as simple and as obvious as it, oh yeah, just calm the breathing. But when you get more used to it, you can go, do you know what, I'm feeling a little bit negative, bit concerned. You can focus on the breath, it can recharge your energies, and then you can go back to the situation feeling more control and less if we encapsulate the whole thing as anxiety. So I can go into a sort of...
That's probably a good word for that, isn't it? It's a good word for that.
Yeah, which sort of encapsulates the whole thing, anxiety, which brings in fear, not concern. So it's when that gets out of control and it overloads on that 100% of our normal daily life that we're dealing with. We've got obligations, we've got things to do, challenges. But when it starts to inflate to a bigger pressure, or we start to wedge in that extra bit of pie to make it 110%, that's when we start to get the burnout. And that's when we start to get adverse effects with sometimes mental health, but also physical as well. So the breathing technique, all one has to do is just get into a zone. And a lot of people can't think what I call think in their own head because they're very self-conscious. They don't allow themselves to just relax. And again, if a person is doesn't have a bent towards being able to do that easily, the more you practice it, the easier it gets. You know, I've said the quote about going through the jungle. If we think of all this like a jungle that hasn't got a pathway, so that jungle is like, oh, don't know what's in there, anxiety, fear, don't know what to do, getting burnout because I've got to go the other side. If someone starts macheting through that jungle in some of the easier terrain, by the time the 30th, 40th, 50th person's gone through, you've got a pathway through it. And that's to get to the other side. Your thoughts and thinking process within the synapses of the brain, that's all the little things that spark up that enables us to function. That path gets more and more established until it becomes part of your deep subconscious that what affected you a year ago in an anxiety sort of way will not affect you the following year because you've been able to deal with it, because you've used the techniques. And basically it's just get your own space, give yourself a bit of peace and quiet. Don't think you've got to meditate and go into some Buddhist zone and all that sort of thing. You'll naturally get that anyway. You'll probably end up levitating if you get deeper in that, joking aside. So breathing, it's just getting yourself like I'm sitting now, just in a nice composed position. You just sort of shrug your shoulders, just make up little movements to connect with your body without having to do any exercise. Then just relax in a nice postured seated position and start to breathe calm and deep. Then as you breathe and get that sensation, you start to notice it, follow the journey. So what you're doing is you're disconnecting your mind and doing something very intrinsic, which actually clinically, scientifically has been proven, and it's been known by well-being people for a long time, that the breath then calms the central nervous system, it oxygenates the blood flow, it reduces the blood pressure, which can come from frame of mind anxiety. It reduces the heartbeat because the body biochemistry is sensing that it's getting more oxygen. So you've got the physiological benefits with all anxiety aside, but considering we're talking about that aspect, and that's the content of our chat, is the breath then can be used to just get into this different zone, and actually using the breath does change what's called the biorhythms of the brain. And then you feel more calm and centered, where that pressure, that little wedge has been pushed out of that 100% pie chart. Right, I hope you're following this storyline, but getting the perspective. I mean, I could say, do this technique and go, oh yeah, but it didn't work because one doesn't understand the concept, how one thinks approaching this sort of subject. So with deep breathing, that's the good place to start, and just making up the breathing technique as you want to, just breathing in calmly, but really feel the lungs expand, then deflate, and then just get into this rhythm. And we're very much affected by rhythms, whether it's sound, types of music. Think of it like that. If someone wants to relax in the afternoon, they're not going to put on heavy head-banging rock, are they?
No.
They're going to put on nice melodial, little, maybe a soul singer, and it's a slow rhythm because that's the feeling they want. If they wanted something energetic, they're going to put on the rock music. If they didn't want to feel energized, they wouldn't want loud music around them. They want peace and quiet. It's exactly the same. We're affected by rhythms, and we can create that with the breath. And again, if people are sort of thinking, well, how does it work? Try it. Give yourself 2-3 times a day, couple of minutes here and there for a week, and then see the change. But you'd have to remember when you started on day 1, just to say hypothetically to day 7, you'd go, it was such a gradual, very, very slow increase of getting the benefit from it that I didn't notice it. So that's another thing as well. Sometimes people get you and think, well, I haven't really, oh yeah, it does feel really different from the first time.
So would that help for a long-term or a short-term dealing with anxiety over prepping? Is it something that helps now, or would that generally just build you up into just a better physical, mental mindset?
Really good question. Make it lifestyle.
Yeah. Like prepping is a
regardless
lifestyle.
of any anxieties. Yeah, really good question. But that in itself, then if you think actually it can contribute to so many things of just calming the frame of mind, getting the oxygenated blood, getting the physical benefits. Yeah, make it lifestyle. And even when you don't have a concern, get into the habit, because the more you chop down that pathway through the jungle, the more the path, and before you know it, you've got a highway. You've got hundreds of people. Think of those hundreds of people. Oh, massive, great. 10 years ago, we couldn't even get through that jungle. Now there's a pathway. All right. Ecology aside, we're talking about this hypothetical, okay? We're not talking about going and destroying jungles, but that being the principle, then before you know it, you've got a highway and everyone's going there. You've got the highway, metaphorically, your frame of mind, and lots of things can be applied through that highway. So not just going, oh, just when I'm anxious. When you get more used to it and it becomes something that one does as a habit and part of your lifestyle, because it's just nice to do anyway, you'll find that when you do need it for those anxious times, my God, have you got even more control and empowerment because it's become part of you. If that, that sounds a bit heavy and a bit sort of
Can I just
dramatic.
Peter, when you said the highway, obviously I'm aware, but the guys are not. The metaphor that you're using is for basically, if you're first time going through something and you're going through a, say, forest that has no pathway, then somebody else will follow you, or somebody else, the pathway gets more embedded and it becomes easier to cross. So by the end of, say, you've done this 100 times, or 100 people crossed it, you basically opened up an easy way. Is that obviously the metaphor? That's what that means. In the
on point. Nail on the head.
Yeah, so basically it's understanding. So whatever you try to do first time, it's going to be harder, but you build up a resilience or pathway understanding, and your whole, be it body, spirit, or whatever, it becomes then easier after you've done this, and it becomes that. So just for the guys there. For the guys there.
Sorry, I was talking shop there. I was talking shop, and it's like everyone's going to know. It's like, but sometimes people are going to think, what's he going on about? Oh, the cycle. So, I'm glad you brought that up, because, it then reiterates for everyone going, oh, now it doesn't make a bit more sense now. Anna just asked him that question. So, all good stuff.
Somebody else joined. Hi, Monkey Wrench. Sorry.
Hello,
so people joining. Sorry, guys. I've been concentrating on talking, haven't sort of paid attention to the what do you call them? To the chat. Sorry. Anyway, so welcome whoever else joined. So another thing, right? With the prepping stuff, you said obviously the chart, and it's easy because kind of to choose and prioritize. But I found in some people that have been emailing, what when you get to the stage when that prepping part, it becomes so obsessively strong that people struggle to, it's kind of, not saying nothing becomes meta, but they get obsessed and consumed with the whole prepping thing that it takes more than, it takes the better chunk of the pie chart, if that makes sense, right? How could we possibly how could we possibly deal with that? Because again, I find myself consumed sometimes, again, depending what you see. I admit to this, I'm not the strongest not mentally strongest person. I still get affected like everybody else after a little while for certain things. And somewhat again, and sometimes I found that the prepping things seem to just take over, not say take over your life, because you're still doing other stuff, but it's take over like 90% of the mentality in my brain or in some people's brains. So how could we possibly kind of kick it out of your head?
It's sort of an individual thing, and again, a very good question, which we could spend all night talking about, but I'll try and condense it. You've highlighted what you've just said there.
If somebody else just mentioned the same, it's the same thing. So just like with the addiction to Prepper's news and stuff, is having an effect. So obviously we are, I think, I'll say secret sufferers, if that I know, forgive me all for saying that, but I think we are of certain mentality. There's certain stuff you just, sorry, I've interrupted you, but yeah, please.
No, that's fine. And I think you've made really relevant points for people that are concerned, that are obviously going to be listening and watching us now and listening in the future and watching, to actually try to get to grips and go, I don't want to feel victimized, be my own victim
good word,
to this sort of anxiety situation.
Scenario,
And I get concerned, like I talked to you before about the words we use. It's like you can say to a child, don't drop it, or you can go, hold it carefully. You mean the same thing.
Yeah, good point.
But subconsciously, it's so I always refer to concerns or worries as concerns, because that makes me feel, and I'm not sort of pulling the wool over my eyes. I know how to use vocabulary which actually puts you in a stronger position, the way you think things, the thought process. So one's internal talking, and that's what we're really boiling down to, is one's internal language with oneself and going, oh, you know, I need to be updated and what have you. But I get concerned. But as an example, I can acknowledge it in a flash of a second to go, oh, I didn't go down a rabbit hole. And because I'm aware of it, I can snap out of it, acknowledge that, that was, but I'm actually in control of myself. And I do the best I can to make sure I've got all the backup I need. I know there's certain geopolitical things that I'll never be able to change because of the way the world runs itself. And when one can get to grips with that, which I think is one of the biggest concerns for everyone, is sort of like global conflict or other things that are going on outside of what we feel we can control, is actually just taking a step back and going, right, like you said earlier on, is taking a step back and being able to recognize it. And again, it's like the pathway through the jungle. The more you get used to even that process, the easier it comes to go, oh, blimey. 3-4 months ago, I'd be thinking, oh, I'll watch the news again, and it's, what can I do about it? You get more used to going, I'm concerned, but I'm sort of, and again, it sounds a bit melodramatic, but I don't mean it to. You're more self-empowered by how you think and how you apply yourself to it. So it's very important at that time, you might want to step back. But as preppers per se, it's always important to keep updated. But sometimes you can think, okay, well, not going to much is going to happen over the next sort of 2-3 weeks, like social media.
Well, apparently it could happen tomorrow. It's been happening tomorrow for the past 5 years.
It's like when I got interviewed.
There,
well, with the when we, what we know happened over the past 3-4 years since the beginning of 2020, I was asked a number of times, how did I prepare for it? And where was it on my list of priorities? One being the least concerning, number 10 being the most concerning. And I said, what's happened now globally around the world was number 3 or 4 on my list. I never expected something like that to happen. I was always waiting for petrol, fuel crisis. Then that has a domino effect onto so many things in daily life. That was one of my priorities. But then stocking up for that, I can't change that, but I can make sure I've got food. And guess what? When everyone was queuing up, supermarkets were running out of stuff, all of the priority I put into my food storage, I wasn't having to queue up with social distancing.
I think majority of preppers were like that. That's the whole idea. That's what made us kind of stand out. But in the other people's eyes, made us a bit weird.
And for new preppers, for people getting into preparedness now, they need to take something like that on board, because it's no different from, you take out, do you want your house to burn down? No. Do you want to smash your car up? No. But you've got insurance.
And
so did you get insurance so that you can keep thinking about not crashing the car? No, I just carry on with my life and hope I stay safe and I live long driving my car. But you're always renew your insurance just in case. Now, if we think of preparedness like that, the more we get into that sort of preparedness zone and in control of our emotions, we can treat it as the same way. I just treat it as a simple form of insurance, and I'll get on with my life.
Absolutely.
I'll go trekking, do my stuff. So very much like that.
Yeah. Can I just rewind back a little bit? Wine. Rewind back a little bit. When you said about the words, right? And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that when you talk to yourself, or when you just have a conversation with one's relatives or whatever, you're trying to use a less concerning words, because it makes things sound better and less offensive to the brain, right? That's worded weirdly. But would you agree that the fact is then all the opposite media and everything else trying to deliberately get to our brain by using the worse words and more panicky words that then seem to affect our brains and made us react in panicky? It has to be, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's got to be specific, something that they do to do, not just fearmonger, but it's clearly a link, isn't it? And you just say with the brain and perception of certain words. Yeah. So if you say you get
the AIDA principle comes into that, the AIDA, attention, interest, desire, action. So you can go, but you can create desire to start with. So why not start with D? That's not the way the psychology of the brain works. You get people's attention, you get their interest, whether it's based on negativity, oh, I want to find out about this, what's going on, or wow, this sounds good. Then it creates a desire to take the action. Now, if we convert that into the side, why am I desiring to feel anxious?
Yeah, because why? Exactly, why?
Yeah, it's a natural, the part of the ego is part of the survival. So the desire is, how do I protect myself? Well, actually, I feel anxious because I'm acknowledging I don't want that to happen. But hang on, it's causing burnout. Now, when you understand, like you just asked within that concept, that way of what makes us think in a certain way, we can start to create how we want to think by our own internal vocabulary. So the attention that we can get from, say, something interesting, like you're on social media, it's there all the time. There's loads of clickbait on all the adverts, and they know they've got departments that work on this process to use certain words because they know how they psychologically get people's attention, creating the AIDA principle, attention. Oh yeah, what's that? Interest. Oh yeah, I like that. Desire. Oh, I want it. Action. I'm going to go and get it. But it can be reversed. So I'm going to go and get the anxiety that I don't want. So why am I being anxious? When you can take a step back and reflect and go, why am I? What's behind it? Is it part of, I've got that 100%, that thing's trying to wedge in and I'm emotionally drained because I had something going on last week that was emotional. Now this is making me personal, internally emotional as well. We're infringing on that 100%. And then that's when, as an example, we can take a step back and go, I'm just going to go and do some deep breathing. I'm going to go sit in the garden, in the shade. That's where I feel good. And again, if we can put ourselves as another technique in environments or thought processes that we felt positive about, it can actually get embodied and then help us to then carry on with something that we might have been thinking was a challenge, but we can deal with the challenge, if that makes sense.
Is that something that brings us to the next thing that obviously you've done the exercise with ourselves with the thinking about something bad or thinking about something good, and then basically then changing our perception or ability then to take on take on the world basically in the current scenario. So if something is happening in our lives, be it in, again, minor things that happened in our lives or whatever, or just preparedness, burnout or something, the exercise that you said, not exercise, but the little thing you did with us, the exercise you technique. Would you explain that to people to make them understand how important it is that if you basically lug your burdened thoughts with you, that they will affect you for a very long time, yet the scenario or the case is no longer there, but yet the power of thought is there getting you down constantly where it shouldn't be.
Right, okay. Before going into the actual technique, everyone listening and watching to this, whenever they are listening and watching to it, can all experience something that makes them feel good right at this moment. It can be a memory of somewhere where they've been, or a person that they're in love with, or they dote on, their child, or they can all think of, it can be anything. Even when I went to the art gallery and I just saw this, I wanted to see Van Gogh's paintings all my life, and what did it make the person feel? All right, that's sort of hypothetical, but we can imagine anything which is not in existence but was based on a memory. We can recollect that memory and it can give us that feel-good factor. Like sometimes we might shed a tear on the happy memories of people that are no longer in our lives because they're no longer with us, but we can feel happy, but it's a sort of a sad happiness. That's creating an emotion. It isn't happening. No. It happened years ago, if we're talking about a long lost person, but we can have those memories, and it can be negative as well. We can have traumatic things that we want to brush under the carpet. But in a nutshell, the point I'm making is those situations do not exist. They don't exist.
They burden us constantly on the top of, if you think about them, they burden you, wouldn't you say? Or some
if it's negative, but if at this present moment one can think, my grandkids, or when I went on holiday, or my first love, or don't tell that to your second wife or husband or whatever. But then you've got a situation where it's creating a feeling. right? So we're using this, if we want to use it as a technique of empowerment, the more we try it, then what we do is we use that purposely. So we can have a particular technique where, oh yeah, spiders. Some people are scared of spiders, some people ain't. Some people are scared of small spaces, some people are not. Why? Normally from conditioning from childhood or trauma situations. And that fear has helped the person escape from the situation they don't want. So in a sort of negative, non-productive way, that has been a survival thing. Yeah, I don't like closed spaces. I'm claustrophobic. Why? Because I don't know, I was locked in a blinking me. My big brother used to push me in the wardrobe and lock it and not let me out and thought it was a real, but that traumatized a 5-6-year-old kid that didn't understand the humor of it, grows up, it then becomes a condition where, yeah, I don't like closed spaces. But then someone else can go, here, watch me, I'm gonna go in the wardrobe, lock it up, and I'm gonna stay in here for an hour. I've got a flask of tea, and they're gonna go, what? I couldn't do that. There are reasons and causes. So what I'm saying is a person, they're not in the wardrobe, they're not in a claustrophobic, but they imagine being in an enclosed space. It makes them feel anxious, it makes them feel tense, but it's not happening. It's all the power of the mind that's creating the physiological response, fight or flight, adrenaline, pulse of the heart. What's up with you? Oh, just remembering when I was locked in a cupboard, but you're sitting on the sofa in this massive great lounge. Yeah, but I'm remembering it. So that's creating a negative physiological effect, right?
But it's crazy, isn't it? That mind can do just by power of thinking, make you physically unwell.
Yeah, definitely. And because the mind body, I call the body a receiver of how we think. So if we think, people that are very shy, very enclosed, not all, but the majority, you'll find that their physiological is quite sort of, someone that's a bit brazen, they'll be, open legs, sitting on the train, not caring what they look like, all sort of open chested. All right, that's a bit of an extreme example, but I'm giving state of mind creates the physicality, not just within the physical composure, but what's going on with the biochemistry of the body and the hormones. We don't want the negative stuff. So if we reverse it around the other way and we think of something and get that feeling that's so empowering, we tend to focus on negative things, which are very, very small, very dense, but then we forget all the real good
stuff
things that are going on, which are
it's
far
strange,
more.
isn't it?
Yeah. So that's a good thing to also reflect of. Yeah, count your blessings, all that, without it sounding cliche. It is important to think along those lines in being grateful, but also being realistic and going, this actually is cause for concern. I need to look into it just so that I don't become a victim of the situation, not of a victim of the thinking process. I'm all concerned about it. I'm actually more focused on the actual practical situation, preparedness if it was going to happen. So back to the technique of embodying yourself with a positive type of reaction is get used to thinking things that are from your memory situation. It could have been last week, but remember, it's not existing. But it shows how powerful the mind is when we can go, well, and then you'll notice, my breathing's just started to relax. And I'm just, that was such a lovely time. That was brilliant. You're experiencing that stored energy that one got when the situation happened. So we can use that technique for things that haven't even happened yet. So we can take ourselves into recognizing, things aren't all just negative. Things can be quite enlightening and quite enriching. When we can identify with that feeling, it's the feeling we want to acknowledge, not necessarily the memory. We know the memory that created it, but then we're absorbing that feeling, and we can use this with practice to get more into it. So when something comes along, a big challenge that one has achieved, I think I've mentioned to you with some of the workshops I've done, there was one guy who I found out actually was one of my students years ago, and he went into be a sports science. And we went into a sort of just a deep thinking. It was a whole day workshop, and he was just went into this, not a meditation, but just reflecting. And I kept talking everyone through it, saying something that just made you feel a sense of achievement, and you really felt grateful of what you actually did yourself, not with the help of anyone else. Yeah, it might have been assisted. And then that feeling, and it's when he won a lot of athletics, and he went into an amateur bodybuilding competition, and he won everything. And the feeling that gave him, not being big-headed, not being egotistical, but what I was trying to do was hit that as an example. He was harnessing that feel-good factor. Yeah, blinking, I achieved things. Then when you get the anxiety situation or the thing that you're over concerned with, you think is out of your control, you take yourself back into the mode and feeling of going, do you know what? I can achieve things, because even before that happened,
Yeah.
I never knew I could do it. Now I'm remembering what it makes me feel. I can then project that onto something in the future that I'm concerned about. I don't know if it's, does that make sense? And that's sort of trying to put it in a nutshell. So hopefully everyone got that.
Makes sense. Yeah. Just one thing to point out. I think what obviously you're saying is about the positive thinking. It's not, if anybody potentially thinking, it's not like it's getting ahead in the sand and totally ignoring the current situation, what's going on in the world and the preparedness stuff. It's not that. This is just a coping, can I call it a coping mechanism?
Yeah.
This is something that we
definitely.
can do just to get through if we're getting to the stage of feeling a bit overwhelmed and burnt out and actually not able to even comprehend to half of the things what could be happening. So it's not hiding your hand in the sand, it's just dealing with it and taking a step and just making yourself feel better in the head and trying to look at the things more positively without the fear, well, without too much fear, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. Okay. So pretty much really that's covered the exercise, you know, about the burden ones with the backpack and the positive thing. That's pretty much was that, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the technique when the other weekend when I was putting people, you know, you were part of the group that we were doing that with. Yeah. One example, just to reiterate what you just said, Anna, as well, is one thing that I tried to get everyone to do as the comparison was like, imagine you're going up a hill and it's not happening, but the feeling and thoughts, and then got everyone from sitting on the floor thinking, oh, rucksack, I've got to go up this hill. I'm so tired. I don't want to do it, but I've got to somehow get up there. And then got everyone to stand up. The response was quite slow. You weren't experiencing it, but the mind was so empowering the body to go, oh.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Everyone opened their eyes, can you stand up? And everyone was all like, oh. And then the opposite was like something really good, which is the one that you highlighted a bit earlier that I tried to refer to with both examples. But the example that you did with the group as well was like, so, and then got you everyone to stand up. You weren't experiencing it.
But you felt happy.
Memory and feeling that got into the body, the cellular structure of the body, that when I got everyone to stand up, they didn't get up much quicker. But I remember I noted and said to everyone, because I was looking, I know the techniques to look for. Yeah. Everyone's had a smiley face.
Yeah.
Because that was the expression of the positive thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, as you said about the rucksack or something really good, I gave sort of derogatives of that by saying about, you know, certain memories.
And I wanted you to elaborate that.
Yeah, that's all really important, because obviously, because I'm talking shop, it's all normal for me.
Yeah, I know.
In my unnormalness, so to speak. But then, of course, on your side, you can actually interpret and think, oh yeah, but I'll just which is really a good thing to do, is reiterate certain things, so people that are not used to this way of thinking and talking can go, oh yeah, it sort of makes sense now, and it will make. I can guarantee people will be pleasantly surprised that are thinking, oh yeah, it's
once they think about it.
Yeah, and start to apply it, and then after a while you'll miss it. It will become such a important part of re-identifying with yourself. It's a bit like light at the end of the tunnel, especially when we're talking about anxiety with the preparedness type of mindset, and just not falling victim to it. And there are ways around it. Some people it might take a little bit longer than some others, but there is a way around it, because if you're at rock bottom, the only way's up.
Yeah.
And you can choose to do that, you know.
Yeah. Well, your exercise, that the example you made, that's what I want you to do, to illiterate that. It shows a perfect example. And obviously I did know that I was a subject to the test, if you wish, as well, that the body and mind and soul are so just crazily together that we don't even see it. It only takes somebody, because to somebody it might sound a bit of a cliche, like, oh, you know, body, mind and soul, you know, like blah blah blah, but it is so true. And I think unless somebody's actually experienced that and have been put through that kind of exercise, if I could put it, it just points out to you that the brain is so powerful that basically our cells with the prepping burnout and everything else, it's just us trying to kind of train our brain and find a way of easing the stuff, easing the burden, I suppose.
Yeah, it's like I'd mentioned briefly as well when we were chatting a few weeks ago. It's like learning to drive a car. All right, so a lot of people go, oh, don't drive a car, I don't want to. And I was like, okay, have you learned to swim? Have you learned to ride a bike? But we can use it as a car. Even if you can't drive a car, you can understand the concept, especially for the majority of people probably listening to this have driven a car and can.
Yeah.
When you went out with the L plates on for the first time, It was like, oh no, that's in reverse, crunching the gears.
Yeah.
Right, A, B, C, accelerator, brake, clutch. That's what it's like when we start to use these techniques, right?
Yeah.
Of what we're talking about tonight. Then after a while, I guarantee if I said to someone who drives a car every day, maybe, or not every day, but just gets in the car and goes down the local shop, goes to the supermarket, goes to pick up someone at the station, do they remember, like they did as a learner, slowing down, approach, oh, the lights have gone red, third gear, second gear, clutch, brake.
Automatic, isn't it? It becomes
Yeah,
a habit, isn't
exactly. It's just intuitive, instinctive. It's part of that massive highway that's now going through that jungle where your synapses go, oh yeah, all right. So if you've been driving for a while, a bit rusty, or when you haven't been on a bike for a while, a bit like get on the bike, bang, it all comes back, pedaling down. The first time you ever got on a bicycle, person ever got on a bike? I know, I had one with solid tires when I was a kid. So that was even more bumpy. I kept falling over, the stabilizer on that. Then you think, how could I get more coordination? And one thing I would like to say is that there is something that everybody that's able-bodied has done at least 230 times before they could achieve it properly. And that's learning to walk. Statistically, research, babies, mothers and fathers think, oh, it was the 6th time she or he got up and was able to walk. No, they've attempted it, even if they didn't get off their knees, to want to copy their mentors walking. Why can't I walk? Because I haven't got the physical ability. So I've got to feed that information in. So you're feeding the neurological system until eventually all that information is so programmed, boom, stands up and the child walks right across the living room. And the parents see it for the first time thinking, oh, blimey, only started last week, probably started 2 months ago, with a gesture to sort of get off hands and knees, but then didn't, because it didn't feel confident enough. And it's taken, on average, the average person 230 times of attempting to walk. Now, if you think of that, everything else is pretty easy to attempt and have a go at. You know what I mean? So again, it's just another concept of people going, oh, I didn't know that. And that's when you were a baby and couldn't even walk, let alone being able-bodied.
Now we have, cool. So the last question, I suppose, because we're pushing over an hour now, I think guys are going to be going having a pint or something. But no, is there, as a sum up sentence, you can sort of give us the advice for people that are going through, the preppers that are going through the advice, any sort of, apart from obviously the exercises, any other sort of steps or any other things that we can do, just any advice from just you as you to help us not to get to the wound up stage, like anything extra on the top of what we spoke about?
A generality which boils right back to what you started to say at the beginning of this chat, is taking yourself out of the concept and the emotional experience of what's causing the concern. So in a nutshell, don't watch the news for a while. Read a book that is an interesting subject that you like. A lot of people, I don't read books, will start reading books because you'll be surprised on the imagery. One person can read one book, especially if it's fictional or it's based on truth, but there's part of fiction, which is something really good content. One person will go, oh no, that character, I saw him as like 6 foot, and even though there was no description. So we can create our own images from the processes of the experience we're creating from reading a book. So that is another example. Just try and give yourself something to do, whether it's a hobby, famous one, real cliche one, but it works. Go for a walk in the fresh air. You know, no such thing as bad weather. No such thing as bad weather, just wrong clothing. And I think it was Ranulph Fiennes, the British explorer, that coined that phrase first of all. But it's just something that can take you out physically, especially from the situation. So you might be at home anxious, but then if you think, let's just get out of the house, go for a 10, 15, don't go, project it, predict it, go, I'm going to go out for at least 15 minutes. I'm just going to walk around the park. I'm going to walk out the house, just down the road, and I'm going to do some deep breathing. Or I'm going to take the dog for a walk. No dogs can get enough going out for walks. Oh, well, he's already gone out twice. Go out for a third time then. Do something that disconnects yourself from the environment, which is also containing some of the negative, anxious energy. So it could be, don't even look at the telly. Move, just take time out from the living room, or maybe just go for a drive in the car, or go and get something that you were going to leave until the end of the week. And again, it's little simple things that we can take us out of the environment that's storing that anxious, concerned energy because we're feeling a bit burnt out, and then just disconnecting from it, not just mentally, but physically as well. If you can't physically disconnect, then try to do something mentally, whether it's deep breathing, whether it's just, I'm going to practice this technique that I'm now getting more used to, of thinking of positive vibes, or at least doing something. If you can't get out the house, or you have to stay, you're obligated to stay where you are in your location, do something that's normally different from what your normal habit is, and something that you find of interest. And if you haven't got any interests, find one. Simple as that.
At the end of the day, I think, isn't it, with the whole thing, is we only can do as a preppers, we can only do what we can do. And yes, by seeing what we're seeing there, and I try to say to myself as well, to be fair, like, it's not really a lot we can do, but a lot of things that could potentially happen. So at the end of the day, it's like the best you can do is just make sure you're still a bit, accomplishment is there by the end of the whole thing. And just, every prepper, we are taking our steps to do literally the best as we can do. That's the whole idea of us being a preppers, isn't it? So I think it's in our mentality to be prepared and to do the best we can do. Otherwise, we probably won't be preppers. So at the end of the day, it's let it be not coming thought, but just a thought. That's it. It has to be what you do, and it has to be enough, because that's all you can do, isn't it?
Yeah, which takes us back to the insurance policy. I don't want the house to burn down, but I'm going to make sure I pay that premium every year.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to make sure the stuff is there. I don't want these bad things to happen, but they might do. The odds on the worst things won't. Yeah. But it's not focusing. Remember, that's not our life. Living our life from day to day. Yeah, it's preparing. I do my thing. I've been accused of being paranoid and all that sort of thing, and I'm no way, shape or form am I, and I hope you don't think so, since you've got to know me.
Well, all preppers are accused of being paranoid, and what do you call them, conspiracy theories. Like, we always have label, whatever, from the day one the preppers will have in, like in America, unfortunately, they all have labels of people that just guns, man. They just do guns and armor. Sorry, that was a bad American accent. I do.
Yeah, I think as well, people do get complacent. They think the system will come in and help them. It might do to a point, without getting into sort of politics and all that sort of thing, which distracts from some of the point. And I'm not a real political person. Yeah, I'm interested in politics, but I'm not a sort of ardent anarchist or this, that. I'm just for self-preservation, living life, not interfering with others, having nice relationship with people, getting on with people, just living life. Because that's the majority of time that we're spending on where we are and what we're doing. Yeah. And it's the concerns that become that compounded, really intense anxiety. And when we get used to being able to assess why we think in certain ways, and referring back to some of the things that we've covered in this chat, it then becomes easier to go, do you know what? There's more good things going on than what there are negative. But it doesn't surpass that something bad could happen, but we don't make that a focus on the tiny little thing. Yeah, we actually can take a step back, and it's very similar. I mean, your prime example, that you've said, you've still got concerns. There might be slight little bit of anxiety, but not as much now since you've learned my deep breathing. So you're doing all right now. But when you referred back to burnout, and then what happened over the past 3-4 years, you were getting messages, that sort of thing. You're still aware of it, but I would say to you, you're not in the same what you feel victimless situation as you were when you were talking about the low days to what you are now. You feel more in control, even though there's concerns. There's less anxiety, even though you might go, but sometimes I do have bad days. Then fine.
Of course, with the preparedness,
Yeah, and the more you get used to sort of being prepared, but not paranoid, the more it becomes healthy, where you can go, right, I've got all that. I've got my stash of food. I've got things that I need. But you know what? I'm getting on with life. Like, I'm climbing up 6,500
It makes you feel better. I got to say, I think the more prepared you are, I think maybe I won't speak for everybody, but as a prep, I think the more prepared I am, I feel that sense of relief. It's like, the water thing currently, and I mentioned to the guys, water has been on the forefront of many things, and I've got a video coming out tomorrow. It's because of the things with water in UK, in Europe and stuff, and the water. And every time I feel like I go to the shop, I want to pick up some water there, and I come home, and I'm like, it just feels like a weight off my shoulders just because I picked up an extra, pack of water. It's crazy, but that seemed to be also a thing, just to see the better prepared you are for whatever you are mentally got in your head to prepare for. If that makes sense, then it kind of makes you that sense of achievement, very pathetically small one, But my 24 bottles of water, yay!
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. I know. I was like when I got some dried packed foods that I've never tasted before, and I thought, oh, those would be great for trekking, but they've like got a 10-year shelf life, and I'm thinking, I really fancy having one next week. No, they're for your stores. And it's like, oh, right. So I'm going to buy some more because I still want to try this new one that I'll not taste it. But that being an aside, you've got two aspects, and it's all down to perspective. The perspective is, if you're not that experienced within the prepping realms, or you think, oh, it's all paranoia and conspiracy theories, then if one then did approach preparedness per se, it's a different perspective than the likes of what you've just said and the way that I feel about it. And the majority of people that are now experienced and thinking, yeah, I deserve to have some sort of self-sufficiency within one shape or form, but it's based on the perspective that I'm in control of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not being a control freak. It's I'm in control, that I can look after my family. I've got food in the cupboard. I've got clean washing, that if the washing machine breaks down, I've got it in one of these airtight blinking vacuum pack things. The kids have got clothing. So your lifestyle, depending on the sort of domestic lifestyle and dynamics one has, will depend on how your preparedness is involved. I live in a rural area. So if things really did start to get bad, I haven't really got much competition than someone that lives in a city or an urban area, which has got a slightly different mindset and a different practicality to it. But it's all down to perspective. So you just saying about the water, that's the perspective of going, yeah, I've got more water. So if the system fails, I'm not angry or angst about it, but I've got water, rather than, blinking hell, the water's all contaminated, or the water's been shut down because the workers have dug a hole, broke the water mains. Now we've got no water. Now I've got to go and queue up because the local council have turned up with a massive great lorry of 2-litre bottles of water, and there's 300 people there. You ain't going to be doing that.
No, I'm learning the mindset.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it very much is. But it's for new people, and I'd think you've probably come across some new people that have come across your channel and what you do. The brilliant aspect of you approach your food. Yeah, and the way you do tests, you don't just do it and go, oh, this is food. But the individual thing with you is you go into finding the best techniques and different variations of doing it in different foods and all that sort of thing, which goes beyond maybe the normal preparedness food storage person. But people that have got into that have then come across an element of preparedness as well and gone, oh, I haven't really thought of that. And that's what can create the anxiety. But if people think, you're making as food, one of the biggest relationships we'll ever have in our life is with food.
Yeah.
So food in itself is a really good morale booster. Sorry?
And drink.
Yeah, all right then. Yeah. Yes. Hydrogenated water for me, that's the only thing. And by the way, you can get this with a discount code. No, I'm joking. But yeah, it's all down to perspective, Anna, and hopefully after this chat, people watch it, hopefully maybe if people are sort of interested enough and sort of they're watching this and then go and play it on a replay, hopefully they will do, whether it's a week's time or sometime next month. We'll go, hang on a minute, what did he say? Now and things will start a bit of like a tapestry, like a big jigsaw puzzle. I've sort of tried to create the frame by picking all the straight edge bits. And it's now for people to fill it in with things that are relevant for them as individuals.
It'll take time. It took us time after we had the exercises and column exercises. They won't, but it takes time for the brain to comprehend still, and then as you say, relate to. So it will
learning
take
to drive a car, and then all of a sudden, I can just do it, and then compare. Sometimes maybe what is another good thing as well, just as a little additional thing. It makes things more concrete. Maybe have a journal. If one is really concerned about anxiety, they're going, I'm going to get the grips with this, but I'm not that confident yet. But maybe listening to this, watching this, people go, I'll try some of those techniques, or we refer to it and we can have another chat about it in the near future. If the demand was there, and then we can maybe try an example of a technique. Then people that are following it, if you just have a journal, not on a computer, just handwritten, a little notebook, whether it's a half A4 size with a A5 type size, little notebook that's personal for you, that can write down your thoughts, maybe a bit of poetry. Okay, sounds a bit mad, but just what's personal for you. And then also, like the breathing technique, day 1, didn't quite get into the habit. By day 10, now I'm able to not get a fidgety mind. My subconscious isn't kicking in going, don't forget you've got to go shopping tomorrow, but I'm trying to breathe. Just let me breathe. It's the ego coming in. That will start to diminish. And really important what you've said. It will then become easier to do, and then people will be really pleasantly surprised and go, now I get it, because I put it into action, because now I'm doing things not the way I've always done them, and I won't get the anxiety thoughts I've always got.
Yeah, hopefully guys, you find this somewhat at least helpful, and I know some of you have, and hopefully if you haven't, whoever wanted to or needed the help, hopefully you kind of got this. Is there any questions? If anybody got any questions now, or you can always post the questions later. And obviously, of course, if you maybe, as you say, Pete, we can do a follow-up if there's demand for that, if people want to, then we can do that a bit later. But generally, guys, if there's no questions, I suppose, Pete, then no, nothing. Okay, that's fine. Well, no, really appreciate you, Peter. Really
We've
appreciate
stunned
you
them.
giving
It's
us
like
the
rabbit
time.
in the headlights. Oh, I haven't thought of all this malarkey.
Yeah, I know you're a busy man, and I really, really appreciate you giving the
That's
time.
okay.
And I say, hopefully, you've given guys a food for thought. It's certainly given me food for thought before, and sort of hopefully trying to mentally, obviously, understand the whole thing to do with that
for sure.
fear mongering, and so hopefully you'll help some people as well. So thank you so much, Pete, and well, hopefully have a good evening, and we'll see you hopefully very soon.
Okay.
Right. See you later, everyone. Bye bye. Thank you for watching.
Bye.
Bye.